Hotep. Assalamu alaikum. Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
And I think the mic can just stay up. You just leave it right there. Don't. We're thankful for everyone's patience as we worked out our sound issues. We're going to get right into the program because we're already behind schedule. My name is Matsamela Mapfumo, also known as Marc Thompson. I'm not only a protege of Dr. Ron Daniels and W21, but I'm the host of Make It Plain on SiriusXM Progress Satellite Radio. Thank you. We are broadcasting live right now on SiriusXM Progress, and so this is being heard. Media here, C-SPAN is here. I will let you know at the outset, we unfortunately do have commercial breaks. You all won't be affected by them here, other than if we take a break and come back and one of the speakers is in the middle of speaking, and one of you speakers is in the middle of speaking, I may need to jump in and just and reintroduce your name.
You ain't gonna do me like
radio. I'm not gonna. Well, I don't have to do it with Julianne Malveaux because we all know her voice, right? Even the radio audience knows her voice. So, and hopefully they'll know others. Without delay, we want to bring forward the man who envisioned not only this Think Act tank, right, Rick? Not only one who envisioned this Think Act tank, but envisioned our first State of the Race Conference in 1994 and every State of the Black World Conference ever since then, as a clearinghouse and a way to bring us all together for the sake of unity and self-determination. He was one of the organizers of the film we just saw, the 1972 Black Political Convention in Gary, Indiana. He was a candidate for president himself in 1992. He managed the campaigns of Jesse Jackson in 1984 and 1988, distinguished professor at York College right here in the city of New York, former executive director of the Center for Constitutional Rights, and most of all tonight in the hat he's wearing, the president and founder of the Institute of the Black World. Please give a round of applause to Dr. Ron Daniels.
Hotep. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Well, you know, we're in for some difficult days. We got certain viruses running through the system, so we must have been hit by the Trumptocracy virus that hit the sound system tonight. So, but that's all right. We're going to prevail because it's nation time, right? It's nation time. It's nation time. It's nation time. All right. Well, first of all, we want to say that we're honored that our host is with us tonight. The Honorable Ras J. Baraka is here. We're honored, so honored that he's here to host this meeting. We're delighted to be here honoring one of the great political activists, theoreticians, cultural icons of all time, Emeritus Baraka. We're here honoring him also. It's obviously a critical moment in history, so we want to get right into the discussion. Everybody's been waiting. The whole world is watching to see and hear what it is that we have to say. And we really want to thank C-SPAN for covering this and other media. And particularly, we want to thank SiriusXM Progress 127, where I also had the opportunity sometimes to sit in for my dear beloved friend, Reverend Marc Thompson. I want to quickly introduce the panel so we can get right into the discussion. To my left, and she likes to always be on the left, is Black America's leading political economist, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, the President Emeritus of Bennett College for Women. Give it up for her. Also, following in the footsteps of Shirley Chisholm, as well as our dear beloved C. Dolores Tucker. She is Dr. Faye Williams. She is Attorney Faye Williams. She's President and CEO of the National Congress of Black Women. I skipped over the amazing one who has the largest network of black professionals in the world, FraserNet Incorporated, but also the Power Networking Conference, over 60,000 black professionals all over the world. Please greet George Fraser. And of course, right here from Newark, And back in the day, we used to say Newark, but it's Newark again, all right? He's been here for a long time. He's been on the battlefield for a long time. With the People's Organization for Progress, Chairman Larry Hamm. Brilliant sister who is emerging and is a faith leader par excellence. Come to know her and love her. She is the coordinator of Cleveland Action, now the Associate Dean of the Andrew Rankin Memorial Chapel at Howard University, Reverend Waldrina Middleton. And also for the Center for Media and Justice and Blackout Collective in Oakland, California. Also with the Movement for Black Lives, Shinjiri Tutashenda. Welcome her, please. And next, brother we've watched grow and develop over the years, and Brother Ntangalizi asked about him because we were doing all the stuff around Katrina years ago, always on the case. He's head of President and CEO of the Hip Hop Caucus, Reverend Lennox Yearwood. And the person who over the years has helped us to mobilize and organize the black vote to be relevant, nonpartisan, but not irrelevant in terms of those actions, our dear beloved friend who's head of the National Coalition for Black Pacific Participation, Melanie Campbell. Please welcome her. And now back to the stage, my dear beloved friend for many, many years from Howard University on the Umoja Party. He helped raise me, actually. He was talking on all those other, he actually helped raise me. You know, he's my dad, actually. But he's a great guy, also a minister. Would you please welcome back to the rostrum, Matsamela Mafumu, Marc Thompson.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Daniels, and we appreciate all of your great work. Folks, we're going to get right into our conversation. And begin with the first question. And as Dr. Daniels said, rather than just ask general questions, what's your reaction to the election, we wanted to kind of have a more guided discussion. So the first question that each panelist is welcome to answer, left to right. What role did race and voter suppression play in these election results? What role did race and voter suppression play? Dr. Julianne Malveaux.
Race played a major role. White folks did it for Mr. Trump. Can y'all hear me? Okay. I said race played a major role. White folks did it for Mr. Trump.
You say Trump? Did you say Trump?
Yeah, I said Trump.
Okay.
Rhymes with Trump. But if we look at it, the only African-American women were the strongest supporters of Hillary Rodham Clinton at 93%. 13% of African-American men, I've got to talk to some of y'all brothers, went for Mr. Trump. 30% Latinos and Asians went for Mr. Trump. And so we see race played a role, white folks came together, but it was also class and culture. Hillary Clinton counted on college-educated white women as her base. They went 51% Clinton, but 45% Trump, and the other 6% to whomever, Stein, and I can't find Aleppo. But anyway, basically, while non-college educated white women went for Trump as was expected, she expected a big slide in her base. She didn't get it. She got a 6% bump, not a 20% bump, which she needed. So the $50 million that she has left in the bank, Melanie, belongs to you. Belongs to the National Coalition of Black Civic Participation, because that's who came through for her. But race absolutely played a role. We have never seen white people act in this kind of solidarity, but this is a reaction, of course, to the presidency of Barack Obama. This is what much of this did. Now, you said race, and what was the other part?
Voter suppression.
Okay, I went to North Carolina to stump for Hillary. I went to High Point, North Carolina. I did 3 churches the Sunday before the election. I ran up on a brother who knew me from when I was president of Bennett. He said he didn't do early voting. I said, why not, man? He said in High Point, North Carolina, there were 8 voting places, early voting places in 2012. In 2016, there was 1. Where was the 1? It was at the courthouse. Brother man said, I got warrants. He said, I'm going to go to the courthouse. I got warrants. I did not ask him his business.
Wow.
He volunteered that he had unpaid parking tickets. I said, I hope you paid your child support too. But in any case, the bottom line was you had 800 fewer voting places nationally in general, and for early voting, you had about 2,000 fewer voting places. North Carolina was one of the places where you saw serious voter suppression. In Durham, North Carolina, the heavily black area, the polling places were not working for the first 2 hours. And so people had to go to court to get them extended, and they were extended for an hour. But if you stood in line in the morning, were you necessarily coming back in the afternoon? In addition, and I'll stop, but in addition, in the key states that we know, there was a Democratic loss of tens of thousands of votes. You had hundreds of thousands of voters taken off the rolls. North Carolina, Philadelphia, Michigan, people literally taken off the rolls. Right. So we did have 45% of registered voters not voting, and that's a problem. But we also had people who were registered, who went to vote, who were taken off the rolls, who did not take the time to do provisional ballots. So with Mr. Trump said this was rigged, it was rigged.
For him.
They have been rigging it the whole time.
Right. Dr. Julianne Malveaux, thank you. Melanie, you have to leave, right? So we want to, if you all don't mind, I'm going to skip down to Melanie Campbell. Our question, what role did race and voter suppression play in the election results?
Well, racism played a major part in it. Race played a major part in this, in the sense that, and hopefully everyone has this little flyers, because we wanted to really kind of illustrate that race trumped gender, right? Julianne talked about it. But the other one that I wanted you to take a real close look at is race also trumped age. So when you look at who voted, yes, black folks voted for Hillary Clinton, but I want to run this down for you. Whites 18 to 29, right, gave Trump 48% of their vote. Whites 30 to 44, 55% of their vote went to Trump. Whites 45 to 64, 63% of their vote. Whites 65 and older, 58% of their vote. So when you look at that number, right. And Julianne, I spent a lot of time in Florida. Spent a little bit of time in Georgia, but a lot of time in Florida. And where I'm from the great big town city of Mims, Florida. KKK country. Cleola know what I'm talking about. Harry and Harriet T. Moore, for those who know NAACP history. Right. So it's a stone's throw away from Scottsmore and Oak Hill and all these other places. And so in June, my mother passed away. I saw it. And in July, I saw it. In August, in September, and in the last couple of weeks, I was in Florida. And in all of my years, I'd never paused about getting in the car and running up to the drugstore, Walgreens, or anywhere to go get anything. My brother stopped me and said, "Sis, you don't need to do that tonight." I said, "I'm just running up to the store." He said, "Well, you know, might want to take Mama 38. I didn't. But when I got there, I wish I had it. Because what I saw all out there on those streets, I had never seen that many militia, that many young, not granddaddy, not great-granddaddy, but the great-great-grandson. And so what this is unleashed in this this great United States of America is a time that I've never lived through. And so we're at a place where we've got to figure out, well, the numbers are the numbers, but the reality is white women decided that race mattered more than their own gender. Because at the end of the day, who would have benefited more than white women? And so there's a lot of blame to go around, but we better figure it out. And I told our young people, you're going to find out what you're made of, because this is a fight that's going to go for the next 20, 30 years. And so we have to, as those of us who've been around a while, have to really grab a hold of our young people and say, look, because some folks, I haven't lived through some of it. I lived through a little bit of it growing up, But I've never seen that kind of racism overtly, where our people in my community, my small hometown, were worried about whether or not they would be able to, what would happen to them when they left, if Hillary Clinton won, what was going to be the backlash. I have a sister in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, anybody knows Pittsburgh or New Kensington, Pennsylvania, who 2 days before the election, she's an AME pastor, who had a white woman get behind her in her car, who tried to run her off the road. And if it wasn't for a police officer coming along, I don't know what would have happened to her. And she had ridden that road, but I told her a month before, like, I rode through there, I'm like, you don't need to ride through here, because all you saw was Trump, 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 Trump. So the kind of overt racism that's going on in middle schools and high schools and everywhere else, it's like, I know young people are like, I know you got it, but we better unify in a way that we have not before, because it is about resistance. It is about resistance. And so, that's all I'm gonna say.
Melanie Campbell.
I'd like to add.
And so, but Larry, you want to go
Yes.
next? All right, go ahead. Larry Hamm, ladies and gentlemen.
I just wanted to say I agree with the previous statements, and I just want to add that race was the key factor, and voter suppression was the modus operandi of the theft of the election of 2016. This election was stolen, and it was stolen through voter suppression. As many as 6 million black people were kept from going to the polls. And this didn't start on election day. This started years ago. Their plan was to get control of the Supreme Court, gut the Voting Rights Act, discontinue pre-clearance. The day after the Shelby decision, they introduced voter ID bills in state legislatures across the country. They not only used voter ID to suppress the vote, they used polling place reduction, they used roll purging, and it wasn't just in the South and the battleground states, it was all over the nation. It was a nationwide theft. And what we need to do, we need to look to the future. And although we had one of the highest voting turnouts of any demographic, we need to start a national voter registration drive that will last for the next 4 years and double the number of black voters in the United States.
All right, well said. And let me just say this, and I appreciate everyone's conciseness so far. I just want to remind everyone, because we lost time, we want to try to keep remarks to 2 minutes, which people have been very disciplined about, so everybody's been brief, and we appreciate everyone's said. I want to get back on order, sequential order, though, so we can get to everybody fairly. So George and then Faye. George Frazier, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. So the answer to your question is yes and yes. It has always been between black folks and white folks. It's always been that. It will always be that for the next 100 years. Black folk and white folk. Race will always play a part in every major decision that has anything to do with the upward mobility of black people. Race will always play a part. Now, we are grown-ass people. We know this. So we must now use this. That means we have a clean slate with the Democratic Party, with the Republican Party. Now, think about this. Competition is the lifeblood of our American heritage. So isn't it interesting that we can now force the Republican Party to compete with the Democratic Party for our votes going forward if, in fact, the Democratic Party and Orange Man deliver on the promises he made to black people? Now, if the Republican Party, Trump said things and made promises to black people that if Barack Hussein Obama had said those things while he was running for president, he would have never made it to the presidency. But he made promises to us. Will he fulfill those promises? Will the Republican Party allow him to fulfill those promises? We must hold his feet to the fire, and our black pundits who roasted our president, I hope that you will be as diligent in holding Trump's feet to the fire in regards to what he promised us for our vote. We had nothing to lose. He said that. So we'll see. And so now the Republican Party hopefully will deliver. And there'll be a wonderful party, and now we will have trouble deciding, do we want to vote Democrat or Republican? See, that's the same decisions Hispanics have to make. No one knows how they're going to vote. So both parties have to cater to them and to put a plank in their platform. The other opportunity we have is, how about our own party? How about coalescing around our own political strength? That door could be opened again in some way. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
George Frazier, ladies and gentlemen. Give him a round of applause. That one doesn't work. Red on red, Delta Red. Dr. Faye Williams, National Congress of Black Women. Give her another round of applause.
I'd like to say good evening to everybody. It's wonderful being here. I want to begin by complimenting my sisters for knowing what they wanted and going after it, because indeed we are now the targets, you know, because we were up top in terms of voting for the person that we thought would be doing the most for us, although we were not promised a lot of things. You know, I ran for office myself, and I had a similar experience where everybody thought that I would win.
Right.
And I know in my own heart that I did win, but because my opponent was a white Republican male, he was given the credit for it. So when the vote came in, I thought about my own race. I don't for one moment believe that that man, whose name I won't call, won the election. The election was stolen because of race. It was believed that Hillary Clinton was the candidate of black people and people of color, therefore she had to be defeated. It was also understood that the other person was the candidate of white people. So yes, race played a huge part in this election. In fact, it was the main thing, and as my brother next to me said, it was done through voter suppression. I have polled my white sisters and I have asked them, what am I supposed to say? Because I have spent so much of my life working not only for my rights as a black person, but my rights as a woman. As you know, we're not in the Constitution. So I've traveled all over this world working for women's rights. And what they said to me basically was, we betrayed you. That we knew already. I have it in writing from so many white women leaders to say we betrayed you. And let me tell you what else they said. They said every position that comes open, whether it's corporations or whether it's in the government, of course I don't know who's going to take them, but that those positions should go to black women because black women are smart. They've proven that they can stick together no matter what people have said about us and that we can't cooperate. We prove that we can cooperate. Now, my brothers, it doesn't mean that we're against you. It means that as black women, we work not just for ourselves, we work for our entire family. And we will be demanding that kind of respect. But more than that, we need to expand ourselves and people who have issues that are similar to ours. There are others out there who are not black. I'm not talking about white people. I don't work for white people. I don't have to answer to white people. White people don't do anything for me, and I don't even have a job. But the point is there are many other people out there who have issues, who are discriminated against, who have similar problems, not the same, but similar problems. We've got to find them. We've got to see where we converge and where we can work together. Because despite the fact that it was somebody else's theme, we are stronger when we are together.
Dr. Faye Williams, give her another round of applause. Again, on the question, what role did race and voter suppression play in the election results? The Reverend Waldrina Middleton, again, she's the founder and coordinator of Cleveland Action and associate dean at my alma mater, Andrew Rankin Memorial Chapel, Howard University. Reverend Middleton, please.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I echo the sentiments that have already been expressed. I mean, definitely voter suppression is an issue that impacted the election. Several of our students traveled to North Carolina. Students from Howard traveled to North Carolina and Ohio and throughout D.C. And some of the things that they witnessed, in D.C. alone, some folks had to stand in line for 6 hours in order to vote. In Ohio, there was a student who moved a couple of times, and she was removed from the ballot, and she was one of the disciplined and patient ones that waited to get a provisional ballot. But I also want to talk about the exploitation of race throughout this election. In addition to the limitation of our choices, being told that we only had 2 candidates, you know, we only had 2 anointed chosen ones, but also the exploitation of our narratives. How painful it is for me as a daughter of Charleston. One of my relatives was the persons killed in the basement of Mother Emanuel. And to see, in addition to families that have narratives similar to mine, kind of trekked across this country and having their narratives exploited in order to support and enhance the ballot or the opportunity for someone to become elected. And so I wonder now, what happened to those mothers? What happened to the narratives of those family members that have been exploited? And so I think that is an issue or concern in terms of race and the exploitation of our people, the exploitation of our narratives. And also, what happens now in terms of talking about Flint, Michigan and the water crisis?
Right.
What happens now when talking about Standing Rock and the Black Hills? Where do we go now post the election? And I think that the candidates did a really good job of being convenient in addressing some of these issues. But my concern now is, now that we've been exploited, now that the election is over, what happens to those narratives? And I also want to say, as a person engaged in the movement for Black Lives and Black Lives Matter, that it's important to understand that these young people help to bring forth this issue or topic of race when these candidates straight across the board wanted to ignore it. If it wasn't for Black Lives Matter, I wonder if we would even have any discussion at all about race in this candidacy. So I want to acknowledge and affirm the role of our young people in this movement and its impact on the election.
All right, thank you. Reverend Waldrina Middleton. Give her another round of applause from Howard University. We're next going to hear from, on the question of the role race and voter suppression played in the election, speaking of young people, from Oakland, from the Center for Media Justice and the Blackout Collective, Chinyere Tutashinda. Go right ahead, dear sister, please. Give her a round of applause.
Thank you. So I just want to start with 2 things. One, I'm taking notes on my phone, so sorry, it's a little rude, but I don't have a pen and paper with me up here. So if you see me typing, that's what that is. And then 2, just also wanting to start with just thank you. Thank you for inviting me here today. Really excited to be here on this panel amongst all of you all and to join in this conversation. So when thinking about race and the role that it played in the election, I think we can spend a lot of time looking at the numbers of who voted for whom, and I think that that's important to be able to analyze and to be able to get a sense of kind of where the country is. But even before that, the rhetoric of Donald Trump is a candidate because of the way in which he vilified and went after President Obama. That is the only reason he was even got to where he is, right? It started with race. It will continue to be about race. He continued to use dog whistle language throughout his campaign. You have people who are in big rallies screaming build a wall, build a wall. That is really explicitly around Mexican and Mexican immigrants. He talked around, every time he talked about Black communities, he continued to talk about Black communities in the inner city as if they was continuously synonymous and the only thing. He continued and went after white folks by using racialized language. And we live in a country where the media was really just let it go, right? We allow that kind of language to continue on, and that's what has galvanized the people throughout the country and white folks throughout the country who now have us a little, I won't say scared, but a little shaken up about kind of where they are and kind of where the country is. So I think it's been about race. I think that it definitely, I agree, I think somebody else said it up here, that it's around the backlash of Obama's election, but it also has a lot to do with really the backlash of the current iteration of black liberation struggles, right? People who have been continuously on the streets, black folks who have continued to fight for our rights and continue to look at policing and policing communities. If we weren't doing the work that we were doing, and to be really honest, if we weren't making strides and winning in the way that we were, whether that's changing the conversation or bringing people together, he wouldn't have won. So I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but I am saying that it's always been about race, and it's always been in reaction to the work that black people have done.
Thank you, Chinyere. Give her another round of applause. And last but not least, before we move on to our next question, I mentioned Howard is my alma mater. That was for graduate school. My undergrad alma mater was with my brother here at the University of the District of Columbia, president of the Hip Hop Caucus, my comrade in arms, the Reverend Dr. Lennox Yearwood. Lennox, please go right ahead. Give him a round of applause if you would, please.
And Howard too. I think we were.
That's right. You did go. Yeah, we followed each other. That's right.
I'm a son of Howard. My father was the dean.
And you know, Ron said I'm older than him, so I guess that means.
Yeah. That's. In that spirit, let me first say to the mayor of this great city and a Howard graduate, Ras Barak, my dear brother, thank you. That's important because that's what we want to build on the local level. We want to elect more black mayors like yourself. That's one of our models we should look at. And for Dr. Ron Daniels, thank you. Thank you for what you've done for our generation. And I don't think sometimes our generation understands your genius, which you did, and your model from the Black Political Convention with Jesse Jackson and others. It gives us a blueprint. And that's important in the conversation regarding race that we're talking about. First, let me say there were some positives about race in this election. Let me give it up for another Howard grad, Kamala Harris, who will be in the U.S. Senate from the state of California, which is amazing. Another senator, our first Latina woman senator from Nevada, and even in Oregon, some hallmarks, our first openly LGBTQ governor in Oregon. And so there were some powerful things that happened in this election. Everything that was said, it was right in line to it. Race, election being stolen, voting being suppressed, first election without the Voting Rights Act, voter ID bills being put in place, all those things that we've heard. But I kind of want to state this, that this actually was a repeat election, Mark. This was a repeat election. We've actually done this. For those who've been around long enough, and I wasn't born around this time, but for those who've been around, this is going to look like deja vu when it comes to race. Because when you look back at Richard Nixon in '68 and Hubert Humphrey and what he did, how they used race then, after Dr. King was assassinated, how the peace movement was upset because Humphrey was not radical enough. Looking at him, and they said that he was too much mainstream coming in his position as vice president. And Nixon saying he was the law and order candidate at the time in '68. Hubert Humphrey at that time came in and was playing middle of the road, and the movement came forth and said, listen, he's really the lesser of two evils. We've had that, we don't need to vote. People did not vote, and Nixon won. Well, Nixon began to put in COINTELPRO. Nixon began to put folks in the FBI. Nixon began to wage war in our peoples across the land, and I'll come back to this, but we need to free many of our prisoners who are still in prison, from Leonard Peltier and many of our former Black Panthers who are still in jail while Obama is still in office, but I digress. But Humphrey was there in that process, and when he lost in '72, the Black Political Convention came. That's important because as we dealt with race then, creating the Congressional Black Caucus, dealing with things with race, the question we should ask ourselves that when Senator came, there was kind of a Bernie moment in which they then put forward George McGovern. See, I'm talking to some folk right now who understand this history. George McGovern got lambasted, literally lost. I think Nixon got almost 5,000 electoral votes against McGovern. I think George McGovern only won one state. I think he won Massachusetts, and that was it. Nixon won everything in 72. Of course, he was a crook, and so he left. But what's important about this for us in race is that because we're repeating something, how are we 40-something years later in the same place
That's right.
that we were then? How can we be having this black political convention in 72, dealing with Humphrey, dealing with McGovern, having a deja vu with now Clinton and Sanders, and be, in some cases, having less power? How can we have more members in this Congressional Black Caucus, more black governors, more black mayors, and still not have power in discussing race? So I think our conversation should be, what is keeping us as a people impotent in the 21st century? And I'll go further along to this. We are not holding our people, about race, accountable for doing what they need to do, from the Congressional Black Caucus to black mayors, to black governors, so that when they get our vote and our people see them voting and they get in office, and then they don't do what they need to do, and they turn to big money and corporations and fossil fuel companies and tobacco companies and all those things and the prison industrial complex and take money for conferences. We can go on that note, but the whole bottom line is that when we see that and when young folks see that, then they don't want to be a part of that game. So what we do now is draw a line in the sand, as we did in 72, and begin to say, how can we truly build black political power in the 21st century?
All right.
Brother Mafuma, I just want to add quickly on the issue of race that
I'm sorry, Larry took it. I'm sorry, Julianne. I'm coming to you next. He
the issue
grabbed
of
it from me.
race,
I missed it. I didn't.
Donald Trump was not elected by the people. If we had direct democracy in the United States, Hillary Clinton won by 2 million votes and would be the president. The Electoral College is a vestige of the system of enslavement of black people in this country. It was put together to give the slave-holding colonies in the South more power. It should be abolished. Abolish the Electoral College. Let's have direct democracy, direct elections in the United States.
Larry, the voice you just heard, that is those you listening, Larry Hamm, People's Organization for Progress here in Newark. Dr. Julianne Malveaux.
Very quickly, every president, Reverend Yearwood, every president has used race. There's a brilliant book that was written in the early 90s called Nixon's Piano. Right. And it really talks about how every president has either dog whispered or used a bullhorn to talk about race subtly. Bill Clinton, when he went to a Rainbow Push conference, dished Sister Soldier to sort of signal to white people that he wasn't that close to Reverend Jackson. And that was at Reverend Jackson's conference, he used that place, Ron, you remember that, to disrespect Sister Soldier. But we can look at other presidents, other candidates. In fact, to my sister at Reagan Chapel, lifting up the movement for Black Lives. We have never heard the word reparations come out of a president's lips, a candidate's lips, until the young people of Movement for Black Lives confronted Bernie and then confronted Hilary, who then said that reparations made a difference. So while we can go back and look at 1972, we can look at Nixon, what we have to look at is the way that our people have been used as a pawn on a chessboard from the beginning of time to deal with these electoral issues, and how we have failed, quite frankly, to take some of that power. We can, indeed, Ralph Nader has talked about a 50-state strategy, and that's where we need to be. Hillary Clinton did not go to Wisconsin. I mean, she did not go to Wisconsin, which was lost by less than 1%. Milwaukee, big group of black voters. She got about 70,000 fewer than President Obama did. Had she just shown herself there one time, she might have done better. But we have to look at every state, not these battleground states and other states, because in 2018, there are going to be more Democratic senatorial seats up than Republican seats up. And we have to be clear about what our role is in dealing with these states and taking them back. in terms of the whole third, fourth, fifth party, whatever, I would prefer to have, first of all, ranked voting, which would say you could do preferential voting, first choice, second choice, third choice, and let those votes roll over. So if you needed to express yourself by voting for neither of whom was qualified, frankly, a Jill Stein or a Gary Johnson, where is Aleppo? But I never get over that. But in any case, if you never. But if you had to do that ranking, you could do that, show your whatever, and do that. But the second thing is, why are we not starting now? And in terms of looking at who is there. And the third thing, Mayor Baraka is here. I don't know him, so I don't know what he looked like, but someone said he was here.
Right
Where you at?
Right there.
Oh, that's you? Okay.
That's right.
Cool beans. Like I said, I never met you, but you good. And Kasim Reed and, you know, some of the other young brothers. We need to start running people in posses. We need to start running them in posses. And not this cult of personality, but posses. Run them in 10s and 20s. Because we can't afford to got into this cult of personality. Forgive me, my brother, I ain't trying to make fun of you. I just had never met you before. Heard about you. Lenya told me all about you. But you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, that's inside baseball. But anyway, we really have work to do. And so I hope I know you're running the show, but you know, I'm not going to let you say that you raised me. I raised you. So okay, you know, you
well, I prefer that. I didn't aspire to be this old person that he wants to be. So
you know, look, I own old. I'm old and I'm cold.
All right.
And I enjoy every moment of it.
Hey,
but
Marc,
I hope we
can I
can get
add
to
one
solutions.
thing, Dr. Malveaux?
Please, go right ahead, and then we're going to move on to the next question.
And I think this is important for us. I think as we begin to build on this process, you're right. But I think what I'm saying, just to be clear, is that before we even begin to look at any party, let us figure out our electoral revolution for ourselves. Let us figure out what we need to do this work. I was told long ago, he who funds you is he who controls you. And so before we go out asking folks to give us money to then do voter registration for our own people, we need to go out here and figure out ways that we ourselves can make sure we understand how important the electoral activism is, go out here and get resources to do that kind of work, and then go out and do it. Because if we can't, if we are, that's why we then gravitate toward battleground states, and we're told where to go to, and we are the chess pieces on the chessboard. But since we're playing chess, not checkers, let us be in a position now to move forth. And I think that it is a shame when you do have a Raj Baraka, when you do have a Kasima, when we do have a Kamala Harris, when you do now have us in positions of power. We have millionaires, we have billionaires now, and we should be in a position to have a different conversation about political activism in the 21st century.
And they're disengaged. The challenge is this: voting is not the most you can do. Voting is literally the least you can do.
That's one thing.
And so many people say we do this every 2 years with getting out the vote. No, these people who we elected, if Hilary had been elected, I had said up front, the takeaway from the Obama administration was this: you don't get fed in your mama's house if you don't bring your plate to the table. We did not ask President Obama for much, and so we didn't get much.
Right.
You know, if Hilary had gotten in, there was a long list of stuff we were supposed to ask her for. Trump is in there. He claims he cares about us. What you call him, pineapple head?
Orange man.
Orange man. Oh, I call him pineapple head.
Julianne,
that's yellow. But anyway, whatever it is, the fact is that he has made promises about HBCUs. I don't believe he's going to keep them, but he's made them. So we need to hold him to those and to any other promises that he's made. But it's not at the top, it's really at the bottom. It has to go bottom up, not top down.
Yeah.
We have to be in these local areas and, you know, holding, you know, even this wonderful brother, holding him accountable, holding anyone who has gotten our vote accountable so that we are able to build.
All right. Julianne Malveaux, we just heard. Chinyere, you were shaking your head. Did you want to chime in on this? Feel free.
Yes. So I think that I'm trying to figure out the best way to say kind of what I had to say. I think the thing is, so there's a couple, the conversation is back and forth, and I think that electoral politics is really important, but it's important to an end, right? And if we collectively, as Black people, either in communities, in our like individual small towns, in larger cities, or even have a state, let alone a national strategy, but if we don't understand what that end is, then it doesn't make sense. We can continue to keep voting people in and think that we're gonna have different results. If we're gonna look at history, we can look back into the 70s and 80s and see when we had Black governors and Black mayors all over the place, and the conditions for Black people did not change, right? And in a lot of those cities, they got worse. So then how, and there's a lot of external reasons why that happens, but if we understand that and we understand then the external pressures that are put on those who are elected, then we have to do different. And we can't continue to keep voting people in and expecting them to represent us and give us the same things. If we didn't learn that from Obama, then we didn't learn anything else, right? And so to me, I think that having an electoral strategy makes sense, and it's something, but it's one strategy, right? And that only works when you have a community process that has community goals that then is pushing a community strategy that election and that person who gets elected is responsible for. But until we start that process, then continuing to elect people and register people to vote is going to continue to give us the exact same results over and over again.
Yeah.
Chinyere Tutashinda, folks who are at the State of the Black World Conference, by the way, just want to reset for those who are listening here in Newark, Institute of the Black World, the 2016 presidential election, implications for Black America and the Pan-African world. George Fraser, you want to chime in, please?
Yeah, let me say this and still be loved. Yes, I am Black, in case you were not entirely sure. That is the beauty of our culture and race. We come in all shapes and sizes and skin tones and hair textures. Lots of options. No need to stray, but that's another story. We are the only culture in the history of humankind that put political empowerment before economic empowerment. Last year, we elected over 9,000 Black public officials, and we're still at the bottom of the educational and economic heap. What does that mean? It means that you cannot do it, brothers and sisters, by politics alone. How dare we put that kind of pressure on our political leadership? Right? But again, we're no fools. We were born at night, but not last night. We didn't come down here with the last drop of rain, and we do understand that we're all impacted by public policy, and we're all impacted by the politics of inclusion. So yes, we must continue to use our vote, the power of our vote, to empower those who empower us. And much of the action, as Dr. Malveaux has said, is on the down ballot. It's on the bottom and the lower parts of the ballot. So, a president can make a difference. We do know that. But again, we cannot get where we're going by politics alone. That is a small percentage of it. The bigger percentage of it, and it has been suggested and touched on in this panel up here, the bigger piece of the equation is what we do for self. That's really what it's going to come down to at the end of the day. Because we are the icing, not we, but we are the cake, and whoever is in the political position is the icing on the cake. But we're the cake. And so wherever we're going, it's because we are going to take ourselves there. So let me say this a different way. White folks will not be saving Black people. I am sorry. It's been 400 years and we ain't saved. We will be saving Black people. And so we need to bless and release this, move on, do what we know has to be done by us, and then let the chips fall where they may.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was George Fraser. We just heard from. Dr. Daniels, I think, wanted to say something, and then we're going to shift gears a little bit. Dr. Daniels, please. Go ahead. You want to say no? Right here. No, whatever.
Well, we're getting ready to hear from Roz, our mayor, for one thing, and the time is tight. But I wanted to say a couple of things about this election that I think have not been said. And that is, first and foremost, the biggest political party in America today is not the Democrats, it's not the Republicans, it's non-voters. We have the lowest level of voter participation of any Western democracy. 100 million people did not vote in this most recent election. 100 million. In a low participation environment, I want you to hear me now, in a low participation environment, if you're talking about strategy, those who register and vote in high numbers win. And I'm saying that because no matter what, I know they suppress and so forth, but when they suppress, we have to break through the barriers. If they move the polls, we ain't letting nobody turn us around. We're getting to the polls. The other thing that has not been talked about is, let's be frank. We had a lot of discussion about, well, I don't like her, and this and that, they're flawed. They were both flawed candidates. But when you talk about being flawed, you have to do a scorecard. What would flawed candidate 1 do on the Supreme Court versus flawed candidate 2? The National Labor Relations Board, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Consumer Protection Agency. These things, I don't know much about this. But the difference between the Democrats and Republicans is not fundamental. It is not revolutionary. It is incremental, but it is not inconsequential. Your vote matters. The Supreme Court will be in, that's one election cycle. And there's a lot we need to do. I agree certainly with my sister from Movement for Black Lives. We've had that conversation. We need to build political process. That's what we were talking about, Gary. We abandoned it. We need to get back to it. But in the interim, we have tactical decisions we have to make. The Supreme Court is lost for almost 20 years. It's like a Plessy versus Ferguson decision that's been made. While we were sitting around, some of us, saying, well, I didn't ask you to like her. No permanent friends, no permanent interests, but no enemies, a permanent black interest. That's what we have to deal with. We are getting ready to have a civic lesson like we've not had for a lot of people who don't understand how this works. It matters. It really does matter in terms of the Affordable Care Act. All these things in the lives of people really matter. And so we can't reduce, it's not a question of, it's like simplicity versus complexity. It's simple and simplistic to say, well, it's less of evils. Yeah, that's true at one level, and some people are but no, it's complex. So we have to be able to deal with the complexities because we are mature people. And mature people make complex decisions. We have to begin to do that. I didn't really want to say that too much. I didn't want to go off, but I mean, I'm a little passionate about this. And so now I'm going to return because we do want to hear from our mayor. He's our host, and he has a lot to say about some of the things that we should be passionate about, so I turn it back over to Marc Thompson.
Thank you, Doctor. Give Dr. Daines another round of applause. And I just want to say that some of us were talking on the air earlier. I hope that history ultimately is forgiving of us, because a lot of us follow personalities and entertainers and folk on TV when he's not on TV every day, but we should have over the years followed more and listened more to the guidance and the wisdom of Dr. Ron Daniels. And I hope history will not judge us too harshly for not doing that. Dr. Ron Walters was our preeminent scientist, but Dr. Daniels has been not only our scientist, but the consummate organizer as well, and the organizer of organizers. And I can think back on countless occasions when he gave good counsel. But what do? You know, egos getting away. This is my organization, this is my thing, and all that kind of stuff. I want to be the leader of the movement, all that kind of crab in a barrel stuff. By the way, I just want to mention, Faye, I had a white listener call a woman the other day and said, Mark, black people just don't have crab in a barrel syndrome. I didn't know white folk knew what crab in a barrel was. But she said white women had that in terms of Hilary Clinton, and we saw evidence of that. We're going to shift around because the next question was about policy implications. We'll get to that in some of your questions, but because we lost time earlier, the live radio broadcast is going to go off at the top of the hour. But I want our national audience to hear my brother first, and then we'll get back to the panel. I want the people around the world to hear our brother. And let me just say about this brother, we've known each other well over 30 years. the thing is that we met in 1989, and when I was at UDC, I went over to support the Howard student movement. And in 1990, when we had the UDC protest, the Howard students came over to support us. But in between, for all you Black Lives Matter millennials and whatnot, I know some of us look old and are old, but we were at this back then. The police, black kids used to go, students used to go to Virginia Beach every year. Some of y'all remember that? And party and have a good, well, in 1989, the police beat us in Virginia Beach. We've been dealing with this for a long time. And we organized in 1990 the student boycott against Virginia. That was nobody went to Virginia Beach again after that. So this is nothing new. Please welcome, and we honor his father. I just have to say this, the poem that his father wrote about George Bush. I was honored to have your dad read that on the air on my show. I'll never forget it, one of my greatest moments to spend that time with him. And we lift up his spirit and his name and his son, who is picking up the banner and continuing in his father's name, the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, Ras Baraka.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here this evening. I know Sister said I'm good. Thank you. I'm good because it's my city. But because I'm the mayor, everybody in here is good. And it wouldn't, you don't have to worry about nobody beating you on the way out. That's for sure. So I think that, I try to take as many notes as possible. But I think there's a lot of confusion and a lot of things that we think that have been said that young people pick up. A lot of it is ahistorical in most parts, and so it gives us a false start in terms of where we should be and how we should be organizing now. We should be further ahead, a lot further ahead than we actually are, and most of it is because we spend a lot of the time attacking each other rather than our enemies. And our enemies get away, and we spend most of our energy beating on one another. So I do want to say that there were times when we say that electing black officials didn't matter. I think that's absolutely ahistorical, right? And during Reconstruction was probably the most revolutionary period for black people after slavery during that time, right? When black people were elected to office. That's how you even got the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, by the way. Those things were outright attacked, and betrayed by the Democratic and Republican Party, who made a deal, as Larry alluded to, in this electoral college, in Hayes-Tilden Compromise, which allowed them to take the troops out of the South and outright attack black people. So when you say these things doesn't matter, we went hundreds of years of lynching. Over 4,000 African-American men, women, and children were lynched during this very period that they called the Solid South, that the troops were taken out of the South at that time. So it was a naked aggression on African-American families when that period happened. The other period is probably the 60s, when we began to elect black mayors of major cities across America, which benefited, for the most part, the black middle class. There's a huge black middle class that began to grow because of these elected officials began to steer dollars, projects, and money toward individuals, black folks who had these businesses, were making money. Unfortunately, the folks who began to enrich themselves during this period of time did not have a social and political context, so they did not use this kind of the wealth that they amassed to begin to fund the movement, to do the other kinds of things to get us further along. And when those things happened, the conditions of our community remained, and so what happened, they turned what we called in the 5% nation, then the 85% against the leaders, and so those leaders was gone, and some of these cities even have white mayors today. Because of that black backlash. So we have to be clear about the things that we're saying. So even if you take David Dinkins in New York as an example, right? When people were not completely satisfied with Dinkins, and it's funny that we always talk about the system, but we want people and how flawed the system is, but we focused on individuals more than the system itself.
right? And so when he could not defeat the system by himself in a way that we thought he should defeat it, people turned against him and told him to leave. And so he left, and as a result, you got Julianne and Bloomberg. So 20 years of repression in that community because we were not sophisticated enough to argue with David Dinkins, but support him at the same time. Right? And so because we don't have that kind of, because we're not that sophisticated, you know, this is where we are today, right? And we do. I agree with Reverend Yearwood. We need to build our agenda. That's probably the foremost primary thing that we need to do, and we did that, but we need to do it again, and we need to stick to it and begin to understand that we have to argue with each other. That's a part of it. We do have conflicts, but that should not be deal breakers. Because we argue does not mean we walk away, right? There's 10 things on the list and we don't agree with the first 3, it doesn't mean we throw the whole thing in the garbage. We struggle about the things we don't agree with, but we unite around the things we do agree upon. And because we have not been sophisticated to do that, as Congress does, right? So these people will come together. They know they got cheated, but they will unite around the unity of this country, right? And your disenfranchisement. We have not been sophisticated enough to unite around the things that bring us together and continue to argue around the things that we are opposed to each other about, but have a compact to stay together always. And that's fundamentally important for me. I think there are a lot of issues with the race, right? I think the part of it was the fact, race played a huge part of it. So did gender in my mind, right? And so did class. All of these things played a huge part into why Hillary Clinton is not the president of the United States. And people, what bothers me is after the fact, people are still talking about the candidates, right? And I'm glad that this panel didn't do that. We didn't steer that way because we never talk about the system, right? So we talk about the candidates, but not the system. We don't talk about an electoral college that is disenfranchised us for years. And nobody is saying, look, get rid of this. And I'm glad Larry said that straight out, didn't allude to it, said it straight out that it needs to go away. And that's exactly what needs to happen. None of these people on the TV have been talking about Section 5 and been talking about the Voting Rights Act. Nobody's been talking about the disenfranchisement. 300,000 people in Wisconsin did not vote because of voter IDs. If you take the 300,000 number, you take Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, Hillary lost by less than 300,000 votes in those states combined. Right? So nobody's talking about how, as Larry and others pointed out, that this was a plan to disenfranchise black people, brown people, working people around the country. Another piece is we have to have a united front against fascism. That's clear. That's clear. We have to understand who our enemy. Hitler was elected. He was elected. And what's puzzling to me is, like, when I get into, I had a kind of conversation with another elected official who doesn't look like me, who said he doesn't think it's fair that we characterize all of the people who voted for Donald Trump as racist. I said, well, if they're not racist, they're racist sympathizers. And so the point is, right? It would be interesting to figure out if we characterize all of the Germans who voted for Hitler, if they were fascists or fascist sympathizers, right? So after the fact, it doesn't matter what they were, it matters what the outcome is. So they were willing to ignore his racism, willing to ignore his misogyny, willing to ignore his barbarism, right, for the sake of their own interests. And they did that, and so that means that they're comfortable with an outright and physical attack on our community as long as it serves white supremacy. Right? And that's really what the problem is. And what we have to understand, that even when we get together as black folks in this country and we have an agenda, we have to understand that we also have to unite with other people, right, to win. The object is to win. We don't just want to struggle for the struggle's sake, right? There are thousands of people in our community there are hundreds of people that are in jail, that have been beat, people that are dead, all kinds of things that are going on. We're not activists and revolutionaries because it's fun. My mother and father didn't participate in the movement for medals, for awards, for Twitter, for Instagram, to get all of these things, to be praised. They did this because it was necessary. My father was beat over the head in the Newark Rebellion, right? He wished he could take that back, right? My mother we missed a lot of birthdays, a lot of different things that we didn't have the soccer mom kind of thing going on because we were fighting for the people, right? So at the end of the day, people didn't do that. We romanticized that stuff too much. Right? We romanticize that stuff. So ultimately, our job is to unite with others who have common interests, right? There are brown people who have common interests. There are poor folks who have common interests, who don't understand that they're common interests, so they voted against their own interests. They voted against their own interests because Trump right now is consolidating the wealth in America. The Wall Street has never had a free pass in the United States government this easy than the 1920s. Right? The Dodd-Frank regulations are being overturned as we speak right now. As we speak, he's going to appoint people to the Fed. He's going to appoint people to all of these financial and banking institutions that is going to make it difficult for us to do anything. And the last thing I want to say is that we have to recognize our privilege. Some of us in here are privileged. And when I say that, you know, Obama was black and he was the president, but he had more privilege than most Americans. Right? So he did. Right? We have to recognize our privilege. So some people say we can afford to lose this election. Well, you can afford to lose the election, but there are thousands of people who can't afford to lose, right? So if they take money from housing, so they're already moving money away from housing, undemocratic administration. So when you start taking money from public housing, it's terrible for people who live in public housing. You don't live there. When they start taking money from folks who don't have health care and they pull health care back away from people, stop funding federally qualified health care centers, stop funding the reduction of pharmaceutical costs, all of these things that people benefit from in this community that you don't have to deal with because your privilege allows you, because you got a job and benefits. Right? And so there are a whole class of people in our community that these things are going to hurt immediately, right? When they start affecting Planned Parenthood, when they start putting these justices on there who wipe out voting rights, who make it difficult for women to get access to health care, who make it difficult for women to have representation. These things are real life issues for black people in these cities, for brown people in these cities who do not have certain privileges that we have to come to these meetings all of the time and do the things that we do. We have to understand our privilege and begin to make an analysis based on the fact that we do have privilege, right? It's the same as folks who come to my neighborhood and say, oh, you can't have a supermarket in your neighborhood because it's going to bring gentrification, but you can get in your car and drive to another city and go to a supermarket in another city, and my grandmother got to shop at the corner store and get poor food, right? So your analysis has to be based on your own. You have to think about your own privilege. And lastly, how many PTA meetings have the people in here been to? How many churches have we visited, right? How many senior citizen events and places have we gone to where our people are, right? If we got to go to where the people at, then we got to go to where the people at, right? We can't have this kind of elitist mentality that makes us believe that we are so revolutionary that we become pacifists, right? So we so revolutionary, we don't want to get involved in anything because everything is counter-revolutionary, and we got this hard ultra line that doesn't even allow us to talk to or organize the people who we're talking about in our community. So, right? So we talking about organizing the people in our community, but we won't go to the church where they are because the church is counter-revolutionary, right? We don't want to go to the PTA meeting. We don't want to go to the school because we need our own schools. Yeah, but you got to go to the schools where the kids and your people at. If you can't go there, then you don't organize them. And you know what you do? You sit on the outside and complain about the people who get elected because you can't influence the race because the people in the community won't even listen to you, right? And that my friends, is the ultimate problem because we organize in the community and not with the community. And that's a problem. Right? And so we walk around and we got this really, really revolutionary line, and we smarter and tougher than everybody else, but we're not clear. And our people are not clear because we have not politicized them. And if we think about the things that we're saying, we may have to check the books that we're reading as well, or our analysis of the books that we're reading. I saw this thing coming a long way. I was surprised, as most people were, but I saw the dysfunction in the left, in the moderate, in the progressive elements of our community, in the party itself. the dysfunction, the disorganization, the attacking, the individual worshiping, all of the things that go on. People tell me this person is flawed. I don't know nobody who ran for president ever that's not been flawed. Right? I don't know anybody that ran for president that's been Malcolm X. We have not ran revolutionary leaders. This is American democracy that we're talking about. You're running individuals for office, not for your individual organization. And we have to understand that politically and begin to unite around the things that we have in common. If we don't do that, we're going to lose in the midterms, and in 2020 we'll lose again. We'll lose again. So we got to put our pride away and begin to organize, and then organize ourselves. And the troublesome thing I have is that people come to our community at the last hour and ask us to support them at the last hour. And they ask you to do something for them at the last hour. Then when you don't do it, they say something's wrong with you. Then they beat up on you about not having a progressive line or this. You just showed up here. I don't even know you. You came here yesterday. How do you expect me to be gung-ho about you and then get my people to support you too? They don't know you. They're going to look at me sideways about bringing somebody they don't know into their house, right? And so the idea is if you want to organize progressives and black folks, you got to come into our community today. You got to come into our community today. And all these liberal organizations, you can't come into our community without black leadership in those organizations. You have to have black, and particularly black women leadership, and in these unions, and these other organizations that are around us in our community, because, as was said a million times, black women did what they were supposed to do in this election. They tried to save us all. Despite everything that was said, all of the stuff that was going on, they tried to save everybody. 90% strong. They try to come and save, as usual, save us all from ourselves. Save white women, save black women, black men, save everybody from themselves. They tried to do that and wasn't successful. And in closing, when I was in City Hall, a kid came up to me, a student came up to me and said, Mayor, can you make Hilary, this is after the election, can you make Hilary Clinton the president? So it's a kid. And I said, I tried that yesterday. That's honest. I tried that yesterday. It didn't work. It didn't work. Because in this country, the popular vote doesn't mean you become the president. And that's how we have to start explaining it. The popular vote, we do not have a democracy in America. We do not have one person, one vote in America. And Republicans are clear about it. They call it a republic. They're clear about it. This is not a democracy, and we are fighting for democracy. And so we have to continue that fight for democracy, and all of us organize together in our individual organizations. Like Kwame Ture used to say, if you're not in an organization, you're a problem. You need to be organized, 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 organized. He said that all of the time. You have to be in an organization, and then once you get in the organization, you have to unite your organizations together around common interests and unite with other people who may not think exactly like you around your common interests to begin to push the country further and further to become more progressive, more democratic, more inclusive for more of us, so we can get power for people, not just power for individuals. Thank you.
Mayor Ras Baraka of Newark, New Jersey. That's an example of the black elected leadership we're talking about. Thank you, Mayor Baraka. Give him another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Now, are we circulating index cards for questions and answers? Some of you should be getting index cards so we can take questions from some of you. And, I think that between Dr. Daniels and Mayor Baraka, the other category that I wanted to bring up were the policy implications. I think Mayor Baraka really kind of laid that out. This is going to affect everyone, including, some of those white folks who voted against their own interests. I also want to direct her. Where's Faye Williams from Selma? Faye, you here? Where is she? She was in here. Everybody should listen to Dr. King's speech at the Montgomery State Capitol, Ron, because, and it blows white folks' minds because he's talking about them. He said, you all were taught who were white to vote against your own interests through racism. So it's the thing where Dr. King, a minister, said that black people were given the Bible and white folks were given Jim Crow. And that even though some of these issues we face that, as Mayor Baraka just laid out, intersect both our communities, white folks are instigated to hate us and for it. And then they're broke and poor and they don't have Social Security no more, but it's our fault. And Dr. King talked about that, so I would encourage everybody to hear what he had to say. We want to get questions. Want to say, first of all, I was glad we get the mayor on. Applaud our radio audience, if you would, for me for a moment, because they're about to leave. Thank you, everybody at SiriusXM. Thank you to SiriusXM listenership. With that, as we get questions in, I want to briefly go around and have our panelists share what is next. What are the next steps that we need to be about? And I think Lennox alluded to some of them, because this is real. What Julianne Malveaux said, even for Democrats in the establishment, they pretty much conceded that 2018 is going to be rough on the Senate. And so we may be set back even more. All right? So what is it that we can do? How will we organize? And what will we do? Anybody want to take that on first?
I think one of the most important next things that are coming up, particularly after the amazing speech, prophetic speech that the mayor of this great city, give it up one more time for Ras Baraka. One of the most next we could do is that in 2017, I don't know what he's thinking, but I know in 2017 there will be 2 governor races in this country. One in Virginia and one right here in New Jersey. And I couldn't think of anybody who would be great to begin to move up the ladder than Ras Baraka going to becoming governor of this state. That's the next step. So we can push on him and prod on him and work on him so we can begin to have those. But one of the things that's important that I think a next step is that we cannot confuse voting with policy and legislation.
Yeah.
Right.
That's very important. And the end game is policy and legislation. We have to realize that a billionaire is leaving his company to not take a salary, I think take $1, maybe not even live in the White House.
Yeah.
To really be able to create policy, as Ras and Ron Daniels said. And so that is the end game. And so what I would tell all of my folks who are listening and watching, that demonstrating is important, and I get the power of demonstrating, but demonstration without legislation leads to frustration. And so we have to understand the end game and begin to look at how we can shape policy, and that is our most immediate next step. The issue that was brought up around the EPA, I gotta say this, around what's going on, the gutting of that, particularly with Flint, today is right around 4 years of Superstorm Sandy hitting New Jersey. I'm from Louisiana. With Faye, we went through Hurricane Katrina. What's going on now in Flint? Right. Yes, indeed. And then in Standing Rock, these are real. People will die because of these policy decisions, and so we have to fight in a very vigilant fashion to ensure that these things don't happen. And we're going to have a lot of things that are going to be said, but I want to say this: we still have a president who is still in office. Donald Trump doesn't take office until January 20th, and there's going to be a powerful Women's March on January 21st to greet him as he comes. But what's important right now, and I got to say this because I know they're watching, is that what Roz mentioned about us coming together, that we must come together as black and brown and red people, all people. We must come together as black, red, and brown. And so right now, who's watching, and some of them have been tweeting, Standing Rock is a next step. Right now in North Dakota, there is the amazing peaceful resistance going on. And if black people come together 100% to support and stand with Standing Rock, I couldn't think of a better next step than that. And we must be there and demand that this president stand with Standing Rock, as him and Michelle went to Standing Rock in 2014. And we must demand that this president stand with Standing Rock, cancel that pipeline, first and foremost, and free those people and free the land. And we must be with them as an immediate next step.
All right.
You know, one of the
Any
things-
other next step?